Hi everyone. So today is our fifth lesson for strategic financial management. So it's actually we've come through almost half of the whole module. So today we will be talking about one of the most important decisions when it comes to strategic investment decisions. So we will be, as you can see in the topic, we will be covering evaluating strategic investment opportunities today. Hold on. Okay, right, guys. So now evaluating strategic investment opportunities. So before talking about evaluating strategic investment opportunity, we need to understand what is strategic investment decision. So what is it? So this is basically a firm's decision to kind of invest in its current funds more efficiently in kind of like a long-term asset, anticipating some kind of inflow over the years. So this benefit would probably is expected actually over a series of years, and this is basically considered as a capital budgeting decision. So now as you can see, strategic investment decision involves investing in some kind of, and kind of, it could be like a asset or a decision which involves a lot of money, where the organization needs to invest a certain amount of funds in order, but obviously the anticipation of cash income is supposed to be coming over a series of years. So this is basically a very kind of like a long-term decision. It is not going to be a short-term decision, as you can see. Because of that, strategic investment decisions are very important for any organization. So why do I say so? Let me see. So what is included in strategic investment decisions or the capital budgeting decision? Now when it comes to capital budgeting decision, this would be something where, let's say, an organization decides on, one of the most like the decisions that everyone knows about is investing on some sort of machinery. It's like a short term, kind of like a small scale strategic investment decision, deciding on investing in a kind of like a machinery. So a long term asset, that is a strategic investment decision. So what happens here is the organization needs to decide on, okay, right, do we have to invest on this? Because the investment or the cash inflow would be coming in a series of years. It's not going to be this year. It could be next year or the year after. It could be after 5 years. It could be something that comes in different amount of years. But because of this cash inflow, the organization needs to decide on this investment. So something, normal would be investing in a certain machinery. It could also be expansion or expanding an organization to decision to expand to a different company would involve a strategic investment decision. So when it comes to an organization, if the organization is earning a lot of profits and the organization does have a lot of current funds, they would obviously try to decide on, okay, what is the most suited method for the current funds to be invested. So one of the main decisions that any organization would take is to expand their organization. That it could be an expansion in the same country, like expanding into a different, let's say, a different town or a city. How also it could also be expanding, mostly actually be expanding into a different country, because that is, in this global era, expanding into a different country is very important. That is something that is kind of done like mostly by organization. So one of the main decisions that when it comes to a firm, the main decision that an organization would take is to invest on expansion. So as you can see here, so firm's investment decision could include expansion. I talked about it. The second one that is mentioned here is acquisition. So now what is acquisition? Now you would wonder, okay, right, what is acquisition? Acquisition is actually investing in another company. It's not just expanding. Now, while expanding, there are lots of things that organizations would require. So expanding, using, going and buying in all the land, buildings, and human resources. Sometimes an organization could, try to invest their current funds in a small company which is kind of is established there, which has all the resources, and that particular company could be acquired, and then all the host companies, the brand and things could be included in this acquired company. So that is acquisition. The third investment decision, which would include, would be modernization or replacement of the long-term asset. So what is modernization and replacement of long-term assets? So this is basically when it comes to long-term assets, especially when it comes to kind of like, let's say manufacturing organization, one of the things that we need to understand is when it comes to an manufacturing organization, has to always be in line with the business process, where the organization has to adapt to new technological methods, and therefore when including all those, new machinery might be needed. These are long-term assets. So what is meant by modernization is when it comes to machines, obviously there are machines that are bought at a particular time, and then the new methods could be different. So that could, when it comes to machines, there could be parts that could be included or newly added into the machine in order to modernize that particular asset. So that is called modernization. And replacement of long-term assets, obviously, as you can see, is, buying a new machine in order to ensure that, the process, manufacturing process, gives more profit to the organization in long term. So long-term assets are those that affect the firm's operations beyond a year, a 1 year period. So one of the things that all of us know when it comes to accounting and finance, one of the main things that we all of us consider is that any decision when it comes to assets or liabilities, anything that is less than 1 year period would be considered short term, and anything which is more than 1 year would generally be considered as long term. So now, as you can see, so when it comes to strategic investment or decision, it would be a long term decision. Therefore, it's very important for the organization to decide on the most suited option for the organization. Because like an example, let's say if an organization decides, let's say, to buy a particular machinery, it has to see, okay, right, do we get back, do we get back um like a extra, is there some kind of extra inflow to the organization, sorry about that, cash inflow over the years, or is that sufficient for the investment made? So therefore it's kind of like a very big decision for the organization, and it would be done accordingly. Hold on. Yes. So now talking about the features of strategic investment decision. So one of the main features is they influence a firm's growth in the long run. So obviously I talked about expansion and acquisition. You can understand obviously one of the main features would be a firm's growth in the long run. Then they affect the risk faced by the organization, that the organization has to take a risk when undertaking the long-term investment. So, so, so when it comes to the risk, now, as when we are talking about the strategic investment decision, one of the main things that we told was that the firm would invest in the current funds efficiently, expecting an inflow over series of years. So therefore, one of the things that we know is that when it comes to some kind of investment, there is an expectation of return. So when there is an expectation of return, there's obviously a risk involved as well. So they affect, when it comes to the strategic investment decision, they affect the risk faced by the organization, because obviously it's a long-term decision. So it is more than 1 year. So whatever that is estimated could be correct, could be wrong. So therefore, the organization takes a huge risk in this decision. And the third feature is they commit large amounts of funds. Obviously, as you can see, when it comes to expansion or acquisition, expansion means, when you go to a new country, obviously the company needs to invest in like land building and things such as even human resource. So that would involve a lot of funds. So obviously, it would commit large amount of funds. Even acquisitions obviously would have, because you're buying the whole company, the acquired amount, the amount would be quite high. And when it comes to even the long-term assets, even though comparatively could be less, it is kind of like a long-term decision. There are machinery which are very expensive and could commit, where the organization needs to commit large amount of funds. So another feature is that they are generally reversible once undertaken and can be reversed as a substantial loss. Now, about this, now let me take the same examples that we took. So we talked about the investment decision. Then we said that it includes expansion, acquisition, and modernization or replacement of long-term assets. So using that examples, let me explain this particular feature. So now when it comes to expansion, so when I talk to you, I explain to you, obviously it would involve a lot of funds, investment related to things such as buying land, machinery, human resources, or like, any kind of raw materials and things as such. So after after those, like even half of the cost, when the cost is incurred, could it be irreversible at once? No, because that investment involves, going to another country. And even if it's reversed, there should be a substantial loss. Why? When it's a half-done thing, if you bought a machine, you cannot sell it to the same amount that you bought. You have to sell it at a second-hand rate. And when it comes to the machinery and kind of land and buildings, obviously, because the company has decided not to move on with the investment, then obviously everyone in that industry knows about it. And because the organization also needs to kind of finish off everything, they will have to kind of sell it at a substantial loss. Or sometimes it could be reversible, such as, after starting on or moving on with some certain, if there's some kind of requirement with the government of the of the country, that if certain things are signed in and there is some kind of legal obligation, then obviously sometimes it could be irreversible as well. And also now acquisition is the same case. Obviously, after spending so much of money, you'll have to find another person who would buy that particular company. So because it's a large investment, it will be very difficult to kind of sell it. So there could be a substantial loss. Thereafter, modernization and replacement of long-term assets. Obviously, if you replace by modernize this asset, is it easy for you to sell it back? Obviously, no, because it would go in a second-hand market, and you have to find a person who is willing to buy that particular long-term asset. So, as you can see, how these decisions are irreversible and could have a substantial loss. Lastly, one of the features is that they are most crucial and difficult decisions to make. So as I was explaining to you, you will understand that this particular decision is not a short-term decision. Obviously, also it involves a lot of money. So when it comes to a lot of funds that the organization is investing on, obviously a lot of things have to be thought upon, because the shareholders will be very they would want to maximize their profit, and the company management need to show to the shareholders that this decision is correct and that it would give a lot of cash inflows in the future compared to what is earned today. So as you can see, strategic investment decisions are very important, and today we will be talking about financial evaluation and non-financial evaluation. So as you can see, strategic investment decisions need to be evaluated. So first we would have financial evaluation. As you can see, obviously it would involve a lot of mathematical calculation, and then there is non-financial evaluation. We should obviously not have mathematical calculation. So when it comes to financial evaluation here, you can see that we have two sections. One is called non-discounted cash flow methods. Thereafter, it is discounted cash flow method. So now what is non-discounted cash flow method? Discounted cash flow methods. So non-discounted cash flow methods are methods which doesn't consider the inflation and the time value of money. Now, what is time value of money? Now, when it comes to the money that you have today, let's say you have 100 pounds with you today, the value of that 100 pounds after 1 year would be less, right? Because there are things such as inflation where the monetary value would be reduced. So what you can buy today for 100 pounds would be higher than what you can buy with 100 pounds in 1 year. Same thing happens for even 10 years. So, in this non-discounted cash flow methods, you do not consider time value of money. So, now we were talking about investment, which carries a lot of inflow over several periods. So first method is payback method. Here, what happens is we don't consider the inflation effect. If you were supposed to get 100,000 every year, that is how the calculations are done. It doesn't consider that the 100,000 you get today, it has a higher value than the 100,000 that you would get in 10 years. So that will not be considered. That's why it's called a non-discounted cash flow method. Payback method is one. Then the accounted rate of return. Thereafter, we will be talking about discounted cash flow methods. Now, when it comes to discounted cash flow method, this obviously considers the inflation, the effect of time value of money. So what happens here is that there is a particular discounted percentage that is considered in order to make a calculation to identify the time value of money each year. So if we say it's a 7% discounted rate, the time value, if you are supposed to get 100,000 today, the value for next year will we will not put as 100,000. We will say 100,000 into the discounted factor of 7%, and then the time value of that cash flow will be considered. So the method that will use discounted cash flow technique would be discounted payback method. So the difference between the payback and discounted payback is how the cash inflow is calculated. Thereafter, net present value, IRR, or internal rate of return. Thereafter, the profitability index is what we will be calculating there. So after that, we will be talking about non-financial evaluation when it comes to suitability, feasibility, and acceptability framework. And we will try and understand how this will be helpful in evaluating strategic investment opportunities. So first, let's talk about as you can see, let's talk about financial evaluation. So what is financial evaluation? Basically, it is evaluating a project financial, looking at the aspect of profitability of the project or investment, and the time duration that it takes to recover that particular investment. So investment generally, so one of the things is that investments basically will become risky if it takes a long period time to recover, because it is hard to really predict the certainty of the cash inflows. Like you can say, okay, right, we will get 100,000 each year. Sorry. So you can say that you get 100,000 each year for 20 years. But can you predict this with certainty that you will get 100,000 every year for 20 years? No, obviously not, right? It's just the predictions. Therefore, this investment would be very risky for an organization. Therefore, the organization needs to kind of evaluate and try and understand, okay, right, is this a correct decision? Do we have a lot of risk involved in here? Okay, so financial evaluation is very important for any organization when evaluating the organization's investment, strategic investment opportunities. So when it comes to evaluating the investment, there are 3 steps that will be taken into consideration to make a decision. The first thing would be to estimate the cash flow. Like before taking, calculating or evaluating the investment, the organization needs to decide or predict upon the cash flows. How much cash flows are we going to get in this particular amount of period? The second would be the estimation of the required rate of return. The required rate of return is the cost of capital, or used to can consider the time value of money. Thereafter, we'll be talking about the application of a decision rule for making a particular choice, which will be most of the time based on the expectation of the shareholders or the shareholder wealth maximization. So basically, the calculations can be done. However, the main decision will depend upon the shareholder wealth maximization when it comes to this financial evaluation. So we need to understand that. So the first, we'll move on to the first method, which is non-discounted cash flow method. So as I told you here, we will not consider that the time value of the money differs. We'll just consider the cash that is expected to be received over the years. So in this payback method, technique generally involves looking into the number of years required to recover the original cash outlay invested in a project. Simply, which will look at how long it will take for the cash flow generated from the investment to repay the initial investment. So basically, what is done in the payback period, what they do is, you look at how much the investment needed for the project, let's say 100,000. So thereafter, the organization will depend upon, okay, right, how much money, cash are we going to receive inflows, what is the cash inflow each year. So what are we going to get in the predicted amount that we are supposed to get in the first year, how much in the second year. So that will be included thereafter. They will try and understand, okay, right, how many years does it take to recover this full cash outlay? So if it's 100,000, how many years does it take for the organization to get that 100,000 back from the cash inflow? So that is what is calculated here in the payback method. Now let's look at the advantages of payback method. So one of the things that we need to understand is this method is easy to understand and calculate. Now, you would wonder, why do I say it's easy to understand and calculate? Because it has a calculation, right? I mean, come on. But obviously, when you do the rest, you would obviously understand that this is basically one of the basic calculations, because there's no discounted amount to be calculated for each cash inflow. Here it's kind of straightforward, so you'll understand when you mainly move towards discounted cash flow methods. So another advantage is that it's cost effective than the other methods, because it requires a lot of analysis. This is kind of very easy to calculate and cost effective as well. So a company can have more favorable short-run effects by setting up a shorter standard payback method. So it is, the advantage is that, okay, right, if there's a shorter standard payback method, that means whatever is invested is already received. So whatever that comes after that, something that is coming in extra. So then it is the company, from a company perspective, it is of less risk. Also, advantage is that the emphasis on the actual cash flows and not based on accounting profit. Therefore, it's very realistic. So here we consider the cash inflows, not anything to do with accounting. Therefore, obviously, it's realistic because it doesn't involve any assumption. Thereafter, the risk of the cash project can be tackled by a shorter standard payback period. So what we need to understand is that the risk of this particular project could basically be tackled by with a shorter kind of standard payback period. Also, another advantage is that since the concern is on early payback, more liquid investment should be selected. So because it is, so one of the advantages is that because we will be basing the decision on the early payback, obviously it will be based on a lot of liquid investments. Therefore, it is advantageous as well. So now what I talked about payback and I just explained everything. Now we need to understand how this can be calculated. So this is an illustrated example. So as you can see, the management of a firm forecasts the following cash flows from the investment. So the benchmark for period is set for 4 years, and anything beyond 4 years is identified as a more risky and uncertain from the past experience. So calculate the payback period and advise the management. So as you can see, this particular investment has, in year 1, how much do they invest? As you can see, these are the years. Year 0 would have like 200,000 that is needs to be invested upon. So what according to the calculation, what we do is we put how the payback happen, cash inflow happens. So you can see we put the years. Year 0 is where the investment happened. This is the 200,000, and each year you involve how much money is supposed to be received by the organization. And there is this is net cash flow, and then this is a cumulative net cash flow. So as you can see, so the first year would involve a 200,000, 200, let's say 200 million, 200,000 actually. So 200,000 investment. You put the NCF, and when it comes to the cumulative NCF, sorry about that, involve 200,000 the first year. So the next 5 years we are supposed to get, first 3 years we're supposed to get 400,000. The next 2 years it will be 500,000. So when it comes to 400,000, when you get 400,000, this 200,000 will be reduced. By the first year, how much do we have to receive? Because you get 400, what is remaining would be the 100. Sorry. 600,000. So year 2, when you get 400,000, it would be 1,200. So 1,600 minus 400 would be 1,200. Sorry, year 3, when you get 400,000, the cumulative amount that we are supposed to get is 800. Because you reduce the 400 from the 1,200. So by this, excuse me, sorry, give me one moment, please. Sorry about that. So yeah, so as you can see, each time when there's a cash inflow, we kind of reduce the cumulative NCF, because obviously we are trying to identify how many years it takes to kind of retrieve the particular investment. So by first year, what we have already received 400, therefore 1,600 is what is remaining. The second year it would be 1,002. So when it comes to the fourth year, we are only supposed to receive 300 out of 200, 2,000. So because we have received whatever we're supposed to receive beforehand. So now when it comes to the fifth year, when we receive the 500,000, so what we are supposed to receive in order to kind of finish off the investment amount is we just need 300,000, but in the fifth year we get 500. Therefore, obviously, end of that particular year, you have 200 remaining, because now you have covered all the investment, have an extra 200 that comes in. So now here we can understand, okay, right, how many years have we taken? Year 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 years are taken, and in the fifth year, a particular amount, only a few months are taken in. So what we do is 300,000 will be divided by the 500,000 cash inflow and multiplied by 12, trying to understand how many months it would take. So as you can see, it takes 4 years and 7.2 months in order to retrieve the investment. So one of the things that we told at the beginning was that the benchmark for payback is set to 4 years. Now, the benchmark is 4 years. However, how much time does it take for us to kind of retrieve this investment? 4 years and 7.2 months. So is it more than 4 years or less? It is more than 4 years. Therefore, it takes more time. So this investment will be rejected because it takes more time than the benchmark payback period. So when it comes to payback period, the ones with a lesser payback period would mean that all the assets are liquid and we retrieve the investment very quickly. So therefore, that is good. And if it takes more time, that means it's not good. So because the benchmark is 4 years and our investment recovery is 4 years and 7.2 months, then this investment will be rejected according to this method. So now talking about the method, let's talk about disadvantages. I first talked about all the advantages that we can receive through this. So what are the disadvantages? The cash flow after the payback period are not considered here. So entire cash flow during the time period are not taken into consideration. We'll only take into account, okay, how much time does it take to recover the investment. Thereafter, the time value of the money is not considered. That is something that I also told before because this is a non-discounted cash flow technique. So in order to kind of address this, the discounted payback period is calculated. We'll be talking about it in the discounted cash flow techniques. So another disadvantage is that it may be difficult for a company to kind of determine the maximum acceptable payback period because as you can see, it was just a mere benchmark. So if the benchmark was 5 years, it would have been accepted. Now, who decided on that benchmark? Something, was it a correct benchmark? That is something that is disadvantageous because I mean you don't know who decides on it, whether it's the correct decision as well. So this method is inconsistent with the shareholder value maximization principle. That's something we need to kind of understand. And discounted payback technique was kind of introduced to eliminate the major limitations of not considering the entire cash flows and the time value of the money. So one of the main limitation, as I told you, is not considering entire cash flow. That's something that we understood now. And time value of money, this is one of the major limitations, and this will be kind of considered and rectified in discounted payback period. Thereafter, now we'll be talking about ARR, or accounting rate of return actually. So this is basically used to measure the profitability of an investment from payback period to ARR. The main difference is what? Cash which is being considered in considered and payback need to be converted to the profit. So here, as you can see, we will be using the accounting income, not the cash inflow. So this is where a non-cash item will be considered in calculating the profit, such as this depreciation. So the following formula will be used. So ARR, generally, we look at the average income return and it would be divided by the average investment and multiplied by 100. This is the formula that will be used. And we need to understand that when we calculate the ARR, the scrap value of here, we need to understand that depreciation will obviously be included in the average income. Therefore, it will be considered. However, the scrap value may not be taken because it's pointless recovering the required ARR by selling off the investment. For this, the company might not invest, but some organizations do consider scrap for residual value. So the decision upon whether scrap value is included or not will depend on the organization. However, this is the method that is kind of used. Now moving on, we'll see how this can be calculated. So as you can see, to calculate ARR, if the average income is £4,350 for 10 years. The minimum ARR expected by the management is 25%. The initial investment as 200,000. If we consider as 200,000, how will we calculate the ARR? So I said, as you can see, average income has to be divided by the average investment. So average investment here would be the initial investment because that is the only thing that is given. So we will include 200,000 below. And for average income, what we do is we will be getting 4,350 pounds per year for 10 years. So it's 4,350 will be multiplied by 10. And the whole thing will be multiplied by 100 in order to get the percentage amount. And as you can see, 4,350 divided by 10 years divided by 200,000 multiplied by 100 would be 21.75. So now it says that the expected ARR is 25%. Now what is the amount? 21.75. Therefore, the investment does not meet the minimum expected ARR of the organization. So the project, will it be accepted? No, it will not be accepted. Now, looking at this, now we'll look at the advantages and disadvantages of this method. What are the advantages? It generally recognizes all cash flows of a project. And it is very simple. We just calculated, didn't take much time. And it has less analysis required because it's accounting data. So basically, we just take the income, use the income statement and just calculate. You don't need to look into cash flows, how much cash flows will. Those are all predictions, right? So it is kind of merely easy to calculate. What are the disadvantages? Obviously, accounting profit is used in calculating return, which is not realistic. So it's actually easy because we are just taking in from the income statement. However, this is not considered realistic because this is like accounting. A lot of things like depreciation are included, and which does not merely kind of determine the exact cash flow that the organization receives each year. So it's a disadvantage, and the time value of the money is kind of ignored. Obviously, we talked about it in payback as well. And the determination of minimum ARR is a matter of judgment. So here also, the minimum ARR is something that is decided upon by the organization. Now, in the example before, the minimum was 25%, but we got 21.75. So if it was decided as 20%, obviously, the investment would have been accepted. But because it's 25, it was not accepted. But that would be, so as you can see, ARR minimum amount is based on judgment, and we can say that the exact amount is correct. So it's this has a disadvantage. Now, moving on to discounted cash flow techniques. So discounted payback methods. When we talk about cash flow techniques, first we'll talk about discounted payback. Now we spoke about payback. So what was one of the reasons we said it's not suitable is because it doesn't consider the time value of money. So the discounted payback methods look into the number of years taken to recover the initial investment on the present value basis. So the cash flow will be discounted using a discounted factor to recover the time value of money. So when it comes to this method, what happens is it is basically a payback method. However, when it comes to the cash flow, we consider the discounted cash flow instead of the general cash. So what is the advantage? Obviously, it's simple. And the time value of money is considered as well, and the liquidity. Since early cash flows are encouraged, obviously, it's advantageous for an organization. So what are the disadvantages? So when it comes to entire cash flows, these are not considered because obviously the calculation is here, the organization receives the whole investment amount. Whatever is after that is not considered, which is obviously not a good decision when it comes to kind of deciding on like an investment which would have a lot of cash flow coming in several years. Also, there is difficulty in setting a minimum discounted payback period. So this would be of a disadvantage as well. So now let's calculate the discounted cash flow here. Now, as you can see, we have to calculate the discounted payback period of the project if the discounting factor is 15% and the initial investment is 200 and 800 cash inflow for the rest of the entire lifetime period. So as you can see, year one, so the project lifetime is 5 years, and year one, as you can see, the cash initial investment will be 200. So what happens is we have an extra column considering the discounted factor of 15%. And based on the table, we'll be taking the discounted factors. As you can see, the first year it will be 1. So present value of the cash flow will be 200,000 and it would be minus. Okay, cash out because it's a cash outflow. So year 1, 800,000. Generally, what did we do in general payback? From 200, we reduce 800 and we just kind of put 1,200. However, here we consider the discounted factor 15%, which is 0.870. So the present value cash flow is 696 actually. We don't reduce 800, we reduce 696. Therefore, the cumulative value would be 1,304. So before it was how much? If you reduce 800, that means according to that, the cumulative cash value would have been 1,800. So that means we consider, okay, right, that a lot of money have come in already. But here we consider the present value, time value of the cash flow as well. So as you can see, so third year, 699. When it comes to the fourth year, you have a positive cash flow, cumulative cash flow. That means it took 4 years and certain amount of months in order to get this, the payback of that particular initial investment. So how much cumulative value? 284. So what we do here is we would consider how many years did it take? 1 to 3 years, and then out of hold on, from out of the 172.8 that was needed, we are supposed to receive 457.6. So you divide 172.8 on by 457.6 and then it becomes 4 months. Therefore, it takes 3 years and 4 months. And the project lifetime is 5 years. So what do you think? This obviously will be accepted. Okay, now now we will be talking about something called NPV. The NPV is one of the most important methods that I use in discounted cash flow method. So one of the points to consider when we do an NPV analysis is that all cash flow should be taken in today's dollar-pound value. It should be, and thereafter it should be discounted. So the cash value will be taken and the discounted factor will be used and the cash inflow would be discounted upon. and then the sunk cost should not be considered as they have already been incurred. So sunk cost is not considered. And also the expected value should be used to estimate the cash flows when they are uncertain. So basically when it comes to the cash flow estimation, obviously it is uncertain. So expected amounts obviously need to be considered, because you have to decide upon how much will you get in 5 years, how much will you get in 10 years, how much will you get in 20 years, right? So it would be obviously expected values. Thereafter, any opportunity cost identified should be included. As you can see, it will be included, and non-monetary cost and benefit should be omitted. So as you know, non-monetary cost will be omitted and opportunity cost will be included as well. So another thing that we need to remember is one must ensure that the inflation rates are treated consistently throughout the calculation, so that all forecasts are made in today's value or the real value. And if forecasts are made in nominal value, then they could be discounted in nominal terms without adjusting inflation. So if anything is decided based on inflation values, then obviously throughout the whole project, the cash flow needs to be considered that way. However, if it's considered without inflation or just inflation, then a nominal value has to be considered. So if the investment gives a positive NPV, it is likely the investment will be proceeded. If it gives a negative NPV, obviously it will not be undertaken. If the NPV is zero, then it's up for the management to decide upon. So basically, as you can see, you'll understand that we will be calculating something called NPV, and if it's more positive, obviously generally the investment is undertaken. If it's negative, obviously not undertaken. So what are the advantages of this method? Here all cash flows will be considered, time value of money will be considered, and it would be consistent with the principle of shareholder value maximization, and there are limitations such as making accurate forecast, such as that. So making accurate forecast meaning, like, see, when it comes to the cost and benefit, it is a difficult task because we have to calculate the NPV, right? So in order to make, there is a limitation, because we have to decide upon the cash flow, how much cash flow the organization needs to, have each year, the cash inflow. So that would be estimate. So how can we be sure that the predicted amount is is accurate? So that is a limitation that the organization also has. Also, another limitation would be that there are no universally accepted discounted rate or standard method of setting up a discounted rate, and NPV analysis will generally be kind of manipulated by setting up higher or lower discounted rates. So it depends, because it's all based on assumption and estimates. So this is actually a limitation for the organization. Also, when projects have unequal lives, or if there are funds constraints, obviously NPV analysis will be of limited use. So that is a limitation as well. So, however, when it comes to the first two limitations, these need to be addressed by conducting something called a sensitivity analysis. Generally, there's accounting method called sensitivity analysis, where the first two limitations are accuracy of forecast of cost and benefits, and discounted rates are kind of like analyzed using something called sensitivity analysis. However, now you need to understand this. As you can see, I talked about points to consider when we are doing NPV, and I talked about the advantages, limitations before even talking about what NPV is. So from that, you will obviously understand that NPV is obviously kind of like a very important calculation. So when it comes to investment decision, this is one of the most important calculations that are kind of done by any organization. This is basically one of the most important calculations done. And as you know, we are out of time. So if I start on, trying to explain to you how to do this, I won't be able to properly explain to you how the calculation is done. So I would need more time in order to try and explain to you how the calculation needs to be done, and to decide upon what needs to be selected and what methods need not be selected. Therefore, I will be stopping the explanation today. And so what we would do with the next class would be, I will be starting off with the NPV calculation, and we will also be talking about the next method, such as, we have, yes, we have IRR, and we have PI, or the profitability index. Thereafter, we will be talking about the non-financial evaluation methods. We will be kind of moving on with those during the beginning of the next class. Hopefully, I will be able to give you a better understanding about how the strategic investment decisions are made. And I hope you have a good understanding. That I hope, whatever I taught today, even though it was a lot of explanation on how to calculate certain techniques that are used in investment and evaluation. Just hope you understood how it is done, and I hope that you will be able to do more sums and try and understand how it could be used in investment opportunities. And I hope you go through all the related materials in order to try and understand how this particular strategic investments are done, because there's a limit that I could also cover here during the class. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of trying to give you like a brief understanding of the whole section or the topic, and you as kind of, it's your decision in order to like kind of research on it and try and understand better on how this works on. So thank you everyone for listening to this class. And I just hope that you understood what I explained to you today. I just hope I'm actually hoping to meet you with our next session, the sixth session in strategic financial management. Hope you have a healthy and good day, a good week actually. Have a nice day, guys. See you next time. Bye, everyone. See you.